You see that up there in the corner? Just a big puddle of gold on the edge there. That's really cool. God, seeing this right off the bat, I bet we might find some really nice ones.
The frozen wilderness of the Klondike was unforgiving that morning. Parker Schnabel and his crew were already exhausted, battling failing equipment, sinking ground, and the pressure of an entire season hanging on their shoulders. Nothing about the day looked promising. Every scoop of earth felt like another reminder that the gold they needed might not be there at all. But everything changed in a single, earth-shaking moment. As Parker's excavator dug into a fresh cut of pay dirt, the machine jolted violently. The bucket had slammed into something so heavy and so dense that it nearly brought the excavator to a dead stop. At first, Parker assumed it was just another stubborn boulder. His crew gathered around as the dust settled, expecting disappointment. Then they saw it, a blinding glimmer beneath the dirt. What emerged wasn't a regular nugget. It wasn't an average gold chunk. It was a colossal, naturally formed $90 million gold megastructure, a piece so massive and so impossibly rare that the crew stood speechless. The formation twisted through the ground like a golden spine, something nature hadn't created in millions of years. Parker froze, staring at the impossible treasure in disbelief. His voice cracked as he finally spoke the only words that made sense. In the heart of the Klondike, the day began like any other, cold, stiff, and painfully unforgiving. Parker Schnabel stepped onto the muddy claim before sunrise, expecting nothing more than another grinding shift. The excavators were groaning from yesterday's overload, the wash plant needed constant babysitting, and the pay dirt they had been running all week was producing nothing close to what the season demanded. Every ounce mattered, and they were falling behind. By mid-morning, frustration covered the camp like a second layer of frost. Rick was tightening bolts on the sluice box, Mitch was nursing a dozer that wouldn't stay in gear, and Parker himself climbed inside his excavator, determined to claw out at least a glimmer of hope from the stubborn ground. The steel bucket dug into the earth with its usual metallic bite, until everything stopped. The machine shook violently. At first, Parker thought the excavator had slammed into a buried boulder. It wouldn't be the first time the ground fought back, but something felt different. The bucket didn't just hit resistance, it hit weight, immovable weight, the kind that sends a vibration straight through the operator's seat, telling you that whatever is down there isn't ordinary. He swung the boom back, dust swirling off the teeth of the bucket, and that's when he saw it. A shimmer. Gold doesn't shine loudly at first. It glows quietly, defiantly, like it knows it shouldn't exist in such abundance. Parker leaned forward, heart pounding. He signaled the crew. The men rushed over, shovels, pry bars, and even their bare hands digging to reveal more of the strange formation. The more they uncovered, the stranger it became. This wasn't a nugget. It wasn't a chunk. It was the surface of something enormous, like the exposed spine of a buried titan, made entirely of gold. Suddenly, the cold didn't matter. The broken machines didn't matter. The disappointing recovery numbers didn't matter. Because for the first time all season, the ground was giving something back. The crew felt it, the tension, the possibility, the electric thrill that only miners understand. They didn't know yet that they were standing inches above a $90 million megastructure of pure gold. But they knew something monumental had happened. And as the dust settled and Parker stared into that impossible glow, the real story began, one that would push them deeper into danger, deeper into history, and deeper into the next chapter of this unbelievable discovery. In the heart of the Klondike, The day began like any other, cold, stiff, and painfully unforgiving. Parker Schnabel stepped onto the muddy claim before sunrise, expecting nothing more than another grinding shift. The excavators were groaning from yesterday's overload. The wash plant needed constant babysitting, and the pay dirt they had been running all week was producing nothing close to what the season demanded. Every ounce mattered, and they were falling behind. By mid-morning, frustration covered the camp like a second layer of frost. Rick was tightening bolts on the sluice box. Mitch was nursing a dozer that wouldn't stay in gear, and Parker himself climbed inside his excavator, determined to claw out at least a glimmer of hope from the stubborn ground. The steel bucket dug into the earth with its usual metallic bite, until everything stopped. The machine shook violently. At first, Parker thought the excavator had slammed into a buried boulder. It wouldn't be the first time the ground fought back. But something felt different. The bucket didn't just hit resistance, it hit weight. Immovable weight. The kind that sends a vibration straight through the operator's seat, telling you that whatever is down there isn't ordinary. He swung the boom back, dust swirling off the teeth of the bucket, and that's when he saw it. A shimmer. Gold doesn't shine loudly at first. It glows quietly, defiantly, like it knows it shouldn't exist in such abundance. Parker leaned forward, heart pounding. He signaled the crew. The men rushed over, shovels, pry bars, and even their bare hands digging to reveal more of the strange formation. The more they uncovered, the stranger it became. This wasn't a nugget. It wasn't a chunk. It was the surface of something enormous, like the exposed spine of a buried titan made entirely of gold. Suddenly, the cold didn't matter. The broken machines didn't matter. The disappointing recovery numbers didn't matter. Because for the first time all season, the ground was giving something back. The crew felt it. The tension, the possibility, the electric thrill that only miners understand. They didn't know yet that they were standing inches above a $90 million megastructure of pure gold. But they knew something monumental had happened, and as the dust settled and Parker stared into that impossible glow, the real story began, one that would push them deeper into danger, deeper into history, and deeper into the next chapter of this unbelievable discovery. The moment Parker's crew began clearing away the first layer of frozen gravel, they sensed something was wrong, or perhaps impossibly right. What they had uncovered wasn't behaving like any gold they had ever seen. It didn't sit in a single place. It didn't break apart like typical placer deposits. Instead, it stretched. Mitch grabbed a shovel, scraping cautiously at the packed dirt, while Brennan used a steel pry bar to loosen the surrounding gravel. Each movement revealed more of the glimmering mass beneath. The shape emerging from the earth looked almost alive, long, curved, interlocked, like the tangled ancient roots of a tree that had fossilized into pure gold. Gold by nature doesn't form like this. Nuggets might cluster, veins might run through quartz, but this looked like a backbone of metal, a golden spine threading its way through the earth in ways no textbook could explain. Parker climbed out of his excavator and knelt beside the exposed formation. Even through the dirt, the gold gave off a muted shimmer, dense, heavy, defiant. He placed his hand on the surface and felt something even stranger. The formation didn't vibrate like loose gold. It didn't shift. It felt anchored deep below, as if the ground was holding onto it with ancient force. The crew switched tools. The excavator was too risky now. One wrong move could damage the formation or shatter a piece worth millions. So they moved to hand tools, shovels, brushes, even welding chisels to gently peel back stubborn layers of permafrost. Every inch uncovered added weight to the air, a pressure none of them could ignore. Mitch finally stepped back and whispered what everyone was thinking, but afraid to say out loud, "This isn't a nugget. It's a structure." The risks grew with every minute. If this formation extended deeper, they might be working above unstable ground. If they exposed too much too fast, the gravel wall could collapse. If the gold vein connected to an underground void, flooding could bury everything, including them. But how could they stop now? They documented every minute of the dig, filming, photographing, and measuring the golden mass. This wasn't just about the value anymore, it was about understanding what they had found. Rarity like this belonged in history books, museum vaults, and geological archives. As more of the formation came into view, its scale became overwhelming. It vanished downward into the earth, curving away into darkness. No one could tell how far it went. It could be 10 feet long. It could be 50. It could be the largest single gold structure ever recorded. And as the crew prepared to open a new trench around the formation, one that might reveal the full scope of the buried giant, they unknowingly stepped into the next chapter of the discovery, where the truth of the formation would challenge everything they believed about the Klondike. The moment the strange gold formation was exposed, Parker knew this was far beyond anything his crew could evaluate alone. Calls were made instantly, and within hours, trucks rolled into camp carrying 2 geologists, a mineralogist, and a survey specialist. Their boots hit the frozen ground with urgency. Discoveries of this importance don't wait. As they approached the excavation trench, the experts stopped in their tracks. Pure silence. Then disbelief. The structure wasn't random place of gold, shaken loose by centuries of erosion. It wasn't a vein trapped inside quartz. It was something far rarer, a dendritic megastructure, a naturally crystallized network of gold grown through ancient volcanic activity. In mining terms, they had uncovered a miracle. Using delicate inspection tools, hand lenses, UV lamps, micro hammers, conductivity scanners, the geologists analyzed the exposed sections. Every test confirmed the same shocking truth. The purity was extraordinarily high, nearly flawless. The gold had formed millions of years ago during a violent geological upheaval, and somehow it survived perfectly intact. The formation spread through the gravel layers like frozen lightning, branching, twisting, interlocking in patterns no human could design. This wasn't just valuable, it was irreplaceable. The crew stood around the experts, listening in stunned silence as the mineralogist delivered the verdict. This is a once-in-a-century structure, maybe once in human history. The economic calculations were staggering. Based on visible length, density, and projected continuation underground, the formation's estimated value neared $90 million. But by scientific standards, the monetary figure wasn't even the most important part. This structure was the kind of discovery that becomes the centerpiece of museums, the subject of documentaries, and the spark of academic papers for decades. Parker felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just gold. This was a piece of Earth's ancient memory, preserved through volcanic fire, iced through glacial ages, and now uncovered by his crew in the middle of the Klondike wilderness. If they mishandled it, even one careless decision could fracture a priceless natural artifact. The risk was enormous. Heavy equipment had to be pulled back. The trench walls needed reinforcing. Survey lines were drawn, soil cores were taken, and the entire operation slowed to near surgical pace. This wasn't mining anymore. It was excavation, preservation, and protection of something that had slept untouched for millions of years. But the real shock came when the geologists examined the far edge of the golden structure. The dendritic branches didn't end. They disappeared deeper into the earth, meaning the $90 million estimate was only for the visible portion. Beneath the gravel, they might be staring at something far bigger, far stranger, far more valuable. And as Parker gathered the team to plan their next move, they had no idea that the discovery was about to expand in ways none of them were prepared for. The moment the geologists confirmed the value, the Klondike suddenly felt warmer, brighter, and impossibly alive. For hours, the crew had kept their emotions locked behind concentration and fear of damaging the golden structure. But now that the experts had spoken, everything broke loose. It didn't happen all at once. At first, there was just silence, a stunned, breathless silence as the number $90 million sank into the minds of men who had spent their lives fighting for every speck of gold. And then, the reactions came like a wave. Mitch threw his gloves into the air and shouted so loudly the entire valley echoed. Rick paced back and forth, laughing and cursing in disbelief. Older miners, the ones who had spent decades breaking their backs for ounces, wiped tears from their eyes. These were men who had seen seasons collapse, machines fail, banks threaten to take everything. And now they were staring at a golden miracle that didn't just change a season, but rewrote a lifetime. Around the excavation trench, the cameras kept rolling, capturing raw human emotion that no script could ever recreate. The giant gold megastructure gleamed under the cold northern sun, almost as if it were glowing with its own internal fire. The brushes, shovels, and chisels the crew had used to uncover it lay scattered around like tools in an archaeological dig. Not mining tools anymore, tools of revelation. Parker stood at the edge of the formation, speechless. His breath shook. His hands shook. He had risked everything for years: money, relationships, his own mental and physical health, all in the pursuit of gold that never came easy. He had watched seasons crumble, watched crews fall apart, watched the ground take more than it ever gave. But now, fate had finally tipped the balance. And when he finally found his voice, the words were simple, honest, and unforgettable. This $90 million gold nugget is insane. Those words weren't scripted. They weren't rehearsed. They came from a man who had just stared into the impossible and realized it belonged to him and his crew. But even in the middle of celebration, danger still lingered. The formation was fragile. The trench walls were unstable. One wrong move could destroy a structure that had survived millions of years underground. The crew's cheers slowly shifted into focused determination. They had uncovered gold, yes, but they now had the responsibility to protect it. And none of them knew that the biggest challenge of all was just beginning. What they had found on the surface was only the start, because beneath the earth, hidden in untouched layers of gravel and ancient rock, something far larger waited for them. Once the team understood what lay underground, a $90 million dendritic megastructure of pure gold, the real challenge began. Discovering it was one thing. Extracting it without destroying it, that was a different battle entirely. The formation was fused into tightly packed gravel and fractured bedrock, held in place by centuries of geological pressure. One careless strike from a shovel, one slip of an excavator tooth, and the priceless structure could shatter. Its value, its history, and its impact would crumble with it. Parker gathered the crew and laid out the plan like a commander preparing for a high-risk rescue operation. Heavy machinery could still play a role, but only at a distance and only with surgical precision. The excavators were repositioned to stabilize the trench walls, acting as protective barriers in case the ground shifted. Floodlights were set up, soil moisture meters, laser levels, and seismic probes helped them understand how unstable the surrounding earth might be. Then the real work began, and it wasn't mining anymore, it was preservation. The crew switched completely to hand tools. Soft bristle brushes, micro chisels, pry bars, even dental picks used by archaeologists on fragile fossils. Every layer of gravel was removed, not shoveled. It was lifted, sifted, and catalogued. The process slowed to an almost sacred pace, each movement deliberate, each breath held. Hours dragged into the bitter cold of night. Frost grew on the floodlight stands. The machines idled quietly in the background, humming like guardians while the crew worked in near silence. Every man knew the weight of what they were doing, not just the monetary value, but the historic magnitude. They weren't just freeing gold. They were excavating a geological masterpiece that hadn't seen daylight in millions of years. Fatigue set in. Hands stiffened. Joints ached. But no one walked away. By the time dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight spilled into the trench, revealing something that looked almost unreal. The full megastructure finally emerged, intact, shimmering across its entire length, branching like golden roots frozen in time. The crew stepped back in awe. Even covered in dust, it glowed as if the earth had hidden a piece of the sun beneath its surface. Parker stared at the uncovered formation, overwhelmed by the reality that they had succeeded in protecting something the world would have never believed without proof. Cameras captured the moment, the exhaustion, and the quiet pride etched into every miner's face. But just as they celebrated the extraction, a new question began to rise, one that none of them were prepared for. Because as the geologists returned to inspect the fully exposed structure, their instruments revealed something Parker hadn't expected. The gold formation didn't end where they thought. It kept going, deeper, much deeper. And that revelation opened the door to the next chapter, where the true scope and danger of the discovery would finally be revealed. By the time the $90 million gold megastructure was lifted from the trench, the world beyond Eureka Creek had already exploded with curiosity. News traveled faster than Parker's team could load the gold onto the transport rig. Satellite phones buzzed non-stop. Drone footage from the mine spread across social media. Within hours, the global mining community was calling it what few discoveries ever earn: the find of a century. The Klondike had produced fortunes before, but nothing like this. Experts from geological institutes demanded high-resolution scans. Museums from Vancouver to London pleaded for temporary custody so they could display the megastructure behind bulletproof glass. Even private collectors, men known for buying entire mines just to acquire a single nugget, sent their representatives with contracts thicker than bedrock. The air buzzed with offers, evaluations, and high-stakes negotiations. Suddenly, every tool on the mine, from the wash plant to the excavators, took on new meaning. They weren't just machines anymore. They were the instruments that had unearthed a piece of Earth's hidden history. The miners who operated them felt a pride that went far beyond gold totals or cleanup numbers. They had carved out something that scholars would study for decades. This discovery wasn't just another season highlight. It was the culmination of every risk he had taken, every broken machine he had replaced, every sleepless night he spent calculating costs, every gamble that nearly bankrupted him. It validated the instincts that had pushed him from a teenage miner in his grandfather's shadow to a global symbol of gold mining ambition. And with that quiet, unsettling revelation, Parker and his crew stood at the doorway of the next chapter, one that would lead them into even more dangerous ground, higher stakes, and a discovery that could challenge everything the mining world believed about the Klondike.